Hello, I'm Brandon Thomas, and welcome to Anchor Management. We got a whole lot to get into and discuss this week, including a recap of Week 10 in the NFL, re-preview Week 11, and we look into the college football playoff picture. But we start today with the NCAA as our leadoff topic. The potential number one overall picks in the upcoming 2020 NBA and NFL drafts were both suspended or ruled ineligible last Friday within hours of each other. Chase Young, defensive end on the Ohio State Buckeyes football team, will be serving a one-game suspension this weekend against Rutgers for accepting money from a family member to fly his girlfriend to the Rose Bowl last year. While he was not suspended, he didn't play last weekend against Maryland amidst these allegations. The top prospect out of high school in men's basketball is James Wiseman, a 7'1" center who is attending the University of Memphis. He's been ruled ineligible. The university released a statement that said, quote, "While James was a high school student and prospective student-athlete, Penny Hardaway provided $11,500 in moving expenses to assist the Wiseman family in their relocation to Memphis, unbeknownst to James." End quote. These two separate incidents have everyone talking, including LeBron James. James has been leading the movement for the SB 206 bill that signed last month, which allows college athletes to be paid. He took to Twitter to talk about the Young incident, saying, quote, "The fact Chase Young even had to borrow money from a family member just so his girlfriend could come see him play in one of the biggest games of his life, the Rose Bowl, should tell you all you need to know. And since y'all always want to know more, he paid it back to his family member." End quote. I now bring in my great friend and co-host Jake Fitzgerald to ask him, is the NCAA too strict with anything to do with money?
Yes and no. I think this situation here, they're being way too strict. I mean, this player can have enough money to pay for his girlfriend to come watch him play in one of his biggest games of his life.
Ridiculous.
But I don't think players should be paid in college. I think the whole point of becoming a professional athlete is to get paid and to get to that highest level. That's where you deserve to be paid. But I don't think the university should be making millions of dollars off of these athletes. For example, a lot of these stadiums in college hold 100,000 plus people, and ticket sales are over 100, sometimes $200, $300 for one ticket, and that adds up to millions of dollars in revenue for these universities every year. And I feel like the players should be getting a cut out of it, but they shouldn't be making a ton of money that they can live off of it in college. They still need to work up to the professional level to get paid.
And I want to talk about the James Wiseman thing. What Memphis is doing is very, very daring right now. These wins in the future could be vacated, but they don't care. They want to win now, and they want to put these players on the court so they can perform now.
Exactly.
And not worry about what's to come later on. And with the Chase Young incident, you're suspending a guy just because he wanted to help his girlfriend get to the Rose Bowl? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, this is a very tough issue that a lot of people are split on. So we'll see what happens in the future. Moving on to the NFL now, the game of the week and maybe even the year with the NFC West rival Seattle Seahawks visiting the San Francisco 49ers. The Seahawks kicked the field goal with the clock winding down to 0 in overtime. This game went back and forth from the opening kickoff to the final field goal, with both teams having the chance to put the game away before then. BT, who do we learn more in this game?
We learned a lot about both of these teams. I mean, you think about the Seattle Seahawks defense. Everyone was harping on them going into this season, or this game, I should say, and they came in and they played outstanding. Javion Clowney was amazing in this game. He had a fumble recovery touchdown, and everything to do with the Seattle defense was great to end the game. The San Francisco offense had them early, but they came back late. And with this San Francisco team, they didn't play well down the stretch. They didn't.
Yeah, it was really the first time that San Fran had to show some adversity, being in a close game for once, being undefeated, and we'll see how they bounce back next week.
Yeah, their really other close game was against Pittsburgh in Week 3. You remember that. But I'm looking forward to see if this division comes down to Week 17, because if they do, they play each other Week 17. Yeah. This could be for the division. One of the best divisions in football, I might add. There was a really good game 2 hours south of here at Heinz Field on Sunday. The Steelers defeated the Rams 17-12 in a game dominated by the Steelers' defense. They had 4 sacks, 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and one of those recovered for a touchdown. Minkah Fitzpatrick has clearly been a great acquisition for the Steelers after they traded for him between weeks 2 and 3. Jake, How good is this Steelers defense?
Really good. I think the Fitzpatrick trade is one of the best in Steelers history, and they finally are getting that secondary back to the way it was like 10 years ago with Paul Amalu and Ryan Clark. They just need to get a couple more safeties, but Fitzpatrick's looking really good. I don't even know how many interceptions he's had. A ton.
5.
He has 2 touchdowns, and that's great for a cornerback. And I think this defense may lead them, maybe even winning a game in the playoffs.
And they're doing this without Stephon Tuitt.
Yeah.
When you think about what he did early in this year, he did a very good job early in the year. But I want to talk about the Rams real quick. Their offensive line stunk in this game. They're terrible. Every single play, the Steelers' defensive line got there. Every play, Hayward, Watt. Each one of them, they're surrounding Goff, putting pressure on him all game long, forcing him into the turnovers.
Yeah, it would be cool to see this defense with Shazier. It's a shame that he's still out.
I forgot about that.
Moving on, the Minnesota Vikings went down to Dallas and defeated the Cowboys 28-24. The Vikings' run defense was spectacular as Dallas only had 50 yards rushing on Sunday night, but their pass defense was the exact opposite. Prescott threw for nearly 400 yards in the loss with 3 touchdowns and a pick, which was thrown on the final play of the game. Kirk Cousins threw another efficient game yesterday. So, BT, will you finally buy into Kirk Cousins?
I never have, and I never will, Jake. It's the same story over and over again. He has a couple good games, then he goes back to being Kirk Cousins. Every single time, this is what happens to him. And I feel bad because this Vikings team's actually pretty good, but they'll go back to Kirk Cousins will go back to who he is in a couple weeks. Mark my words.
I disagree with you. I have him on my fantasy team, so I have a lot of confidence in him.
Stop it.
He has
That's
some good
biased.
wideouts in Diggs and Thielen and Dalvin Cook out of the backfield, too. I think
Dalvin Cook's a legitimate MVP candidate, I believe.
Yeah, we'll see.
What else about this Cowboys team? What do you think about them?
The Cowboys, I'm surprised that their run game was that weak. Elliott struggled.
He struggled bad.
Prescott looked good again. I think the Vikings are a good team. So it was a tough loss for the Cowboys, but they play a good team. So.
Yeah, we talked about it last week where Dak was hitting those receivers in stride, and he continued that into the game on Sunday night. And like you said, he only had 1 pick, and that was on the Hail Mary try at the end of the game. It was legitimately a great game for Dak Prescott and his receivers. It's just the Vikings front really stopped the run. Very good job by them. We let off last week's episode with the struggles of the Cleveland Browns, but they put those off to the side for right now as they defeated the Buffalo Bills in a low-scoring game 19-16. Baker led the game-winning drive that went 82 yards in just less than 4 minutes. The Bills had a chance to tie it late, but Steven Hauschka missed a field goal to ice the game for the Browns. Jake, can the Browns keep this up?
Well, we are talking about the Cleveland Browns, so most likely not. But they are home next week, this Thursday actually, tomorrow, against Pittsburgh. And with the Steelers' defense being as good as they are, I think it's going to be a struggle for the Browns' offense to get anywhere against the Steelers. Luckily for the Browns, the Steelers' offense isn't that bad, so it's probably going to be another low-scoring game for the Browns. And I just think the Steelers will probably win because of their defense.
Well, this Browns team is very difficult to analyze because at the beginning of the year, everyone was saying this is going to be the team that wins the AFC North, and they are actually like 4 games behind Baltimore.
And you have the Steelers above them too. So.
And the Steelers above them by 2 or 3 games as well. So this Browns team is very difficult to analyze. I want to see them play more games before I give like an official thought on what I think about their season because they still have some easier opponents coming up. They have the Dolphins coming up. They have the Cardinals coming up. They have the Bengals coming up again.
They play the Steelers twice.
They play Baltimore again, and that rounds out their schedule, I believe. So, I mean, this is a very difficult stretch for the easier stretch for the Browns, I should say. We're going to learn about them for sure.
We'll see what happens on Thursday against the Steelers. The AFC West just got interesting. The Oakland Raiders beat the LA Chargers 26-24 on Thursday Night Football, putting the Raiders at 5-4. The Kansas City Chiefs lost to the Titans 35-32 on a blocked field goal in the final seconds, taking the Chiefs down to 6-4. The AFC West is now separated by a half game between the Chiefs and the Raiders, and it seems like my stance on the Raiders potentially winning the division is looking better than I thought. BT, do the Raiders have a chance to win the division?
I'd be lying if I said they didn't have a chance, but I really will believe with my stance and say that they won't win this division. I don't think they're good enough to win the division. However, I think they're good enough to maybe potentially get that wild card spot from Pittsburgh. They're playing really good right now. They've played good against Houston, and that lost a couple weeks ago. They came back and won last week, and this week they beat the Chargers on primetime. So I think this team, like I said last week, is making great strides, and they're playing really good football while they're doing it.
Yeah, I disagree. I think they definitely have a good shot at winning the division.
Good shot. I don't think so.
Yeah, and if not, they'll probably make the playoffs. I can see the Steelers not making it because their offense is bad. But the Raiders are playing well, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not high on the Raiders winning the division from the Kansas City Chiefs. You remember who have that quarterback, right?
Patrick Mahomes?
He's pretty good, I heard.
Yeah.
We now go to college sports and football. LSU beat Alabama this weekend. Penn State lost, making the top 4 in the college football rankings. LSU at 1, Ohio State at 2, Clemson at 3, and Georgia at 4, with Alabama and Oregon on the outside looking in at 5 and 6. Jake, will these standings stay intact, or will we see a shakeup before this season
We'll
ends?
definitely see a shakeup.
I will agree with
Minnesota, if they win out, they definitely have a shot at getting in the top 4.
I think if Minnesota wins out, they're in.
Yeah, and I can see Penn State upsetting Ohio State. I think Penn State's going to get back on track. They play Indiana this week. Then the following week, they play at Ohio State. I think they look at that loss against Minnesota, and they're really going to bounce back, and they could win out. And if they win out, they beat Ohio State, which is ranked number 2. So they have a shot, too.
This is really difficult. I think no matter what, LSU is probably going to be in. Even if they would lose in the SEC title game to a team like Georgia, I think that win over Alabama, Auburn, Florida will solidify.
They have a lot of big wins this year.
They have big wins, so that'll solidify their spot into the championship 4. Clemson, I think, is in just because they're being undefeated and then being the defending national champions. 3 and 4 gets weird. I think Ohio State should be good going the rest of the way. I think they'll beat Penn State, they'll beat Michigan, and potentially beat Minnesota in the Big Ten championship game. But it gets hairy at 4. You got Georgia. If they lose, you bring in
Oregon,
potentially whoever wins the Pac-12 championship game, in Oregon or Utah.
Yeah.
They fly in, and what happens to Alabama? Nobody knows what's going to happen to Alabama just yet. They really don't have an opponent coming up that's good enough to catapult them into the championship 4. So I'm very confused on this 4 spot right now. I'd like to talk about it in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch this upcoming weeks.
Very interesting.
Moving on back to the NFL playoff pictures are beginning to take shape. With 7 weeks to go, the New England Patriots are in control of the AFC East. The Baltimore Ravens are up in front of the AFC North, and the Houston Texans lead the AFC South, and Kansas City Chiefs lead the AFC West. The Bills and Steelers are in the hunt for they're in the wild card spots, and the Raiders, Colts, and Titans are in the hunt. BT, do you see any movements in any of these divisions or the wild card spots?
I think the division winners will stay as is. I think the Patriots are in complete control of the AFC East. The Ravens are in most of the control of the AFC North, unless Pittsburgh comes out of nowhere. Houston is borderline on the AFC South. They have Indianapolis right there, Jacksonville right there, and Tennessee. All these teams are 500 or above, so that could get interesting down the stretch. I think the Chiefs have this division in the AFC West. They're going to be fine. The Bills' defense is good enough to take them to the playoffs, and I think the Steelers as well. Their defense will take them to the playoffs. So I don't think this 6 will change, but I'm sure you have a different
I can
opinion.
maybe see the wild card definitely mixing up. If the Steelers were to lose against the Browns, I can definitely see the Raiders sliding in there. I think the Bills are maybe a lock. I think they're looking really well this year. But as for the division leaders, I think they're all going to stay the same.
Well, if we're looking at the technicalities here, nobody is locked in yet.
Yeah, well, I just think they're going to stay the same.
I understand. The NFC is much better contested at the moment than the AFC. The 49ers lead the West, Packers lead the North, Saints lead the South, and the Cowboys lead the East. The Seahawks and the Vikings occupy the wild card slots with the Rams, Eagles, and Panthers on the outside looking in. Jake, what's your outlook on the NFC?
Well, for the NFC, I can see definitely the Seahawks winning that division.
Okay, I like that.
The Vikings, probably not.
I don't think they'll win the NFC North. They're already a game back.
Yeah, but the other divisions, I think they're probably most likely to stay the same. I also don't see like the Eagles or the Rams maybe sliding into the wild card.
See, that's where it gets difficult because the Rams, Eagles, and Panthers are all 5-4. They're 2 games back. The Vikings at 7-3 at the moment. It's going to be difficult for any of those 3 teams to get in, but they're all capable. They're playing good enough to maybe say, hey, I'm here. We can do this. The Rams just need to fix their offensive line problems. Their offense, when they have a good O-line, has been proven to be very good. The Eagles with Carson Wentz, if he plays to the MVP caliber that he played back in their Super Bowl year, I think they can slide themselves into the conversation. And the Panthers, they've been on and off this season. They lost to the 49ers and they lost to the Packers, the 2 teams at the top. But they need to win some games here. They need to win quick.
Yeah, just like the college playoffs, the NFL is going to be just the same. We'll have to see what happens upcoming weeks, and it's going to be fun to watch.
It's just going to be interesting. But I think, like you said, the Seahawks will come back and win that division. The Saints are a lock for the South. Packers.
They're shaky. Rodgers looked shaky again.
Well, I think they're fine with the North, but can they get the 49ers? They play each other next week, week 12. That'll be a good game.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game.
It's time to do some football predictions. We picked 9 games last week, and it's safe to say I was unsuccessful. I was only 3-6, and Jake beat me up this week at 5-4. So we come in this week optimistic that I will do better. We lit off this week with the Browns and Steelers on Thursday Night Football. Jake, who you got in this AFC North matchup?
I'm going to go with the Steelers. Their defense is, again, like we mentioned before, looking very well. The Browns are also coming off a big win, similar to the Steelers, but I just see Baker Mayfield struggling against the Steelers' defense. I think the Steelers' offense isn't that good, but it can definitely compete against the Browns. So I'm going to go with the Steelers.
I'm going to agree with you and say the Steelers as well, but I think Mason Rudolph is going to have his signature game. He hasn't had it yet. He's bound to have a good game at some point. I think this week's going to be his week. I'm going to take the Steelers, just like I said. Mason Rudolph going to have himself a night.
We'll find out tomorrow. Moving on, the Jaguars visit the Indianapolis Colts. Who you got, BT?
I'll take the Colts at home, but I would not be surprised whatsoever to see the Jaguars win. Nick Foles coming back. We know what he does when he comes back into a situation. You know, we only led the Eagles to a Super Bowl championship and led them back into the playoffs. And I don't think if it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have even made it last year. But give me the Colts. I think Brissett is close to playing this week, and I think I'll take that.
Yeah, I disagree. I'm going to go with the Jags on this one. Again, with Foles coming back, I think he's going to have a good game.
Like I said, I'm not going to disagree with anything about the Jags. I think that's going to be a good game. Next up is Saints and Buccaneers.
I'm going to go with the Saints on this one. Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks ever against the Buccaneers.
He didn't really play that well last week, though.
Yeah, but he was hurt
against the
this year.
Falcons.
Yeah, the Falcons 2-7.
1-7.
1-7 now, 2-7. But I think they'll bounce back and beat the Buccaneers.
I'll agree. I'll say the Saints will win as well. But Drew Brees looked shaky in that game against Atlanta. Buccaneers are playing very good offensive football. And this is just like the Jaguars and Colts game. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Buccaneers win this game if they just so happen to win it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Our next game of the Houston Texans visiting the Baltimore Ravens. Who do you got, BT?
I'm surprised this game isn't on primetime. This is a matchup here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take the Ravens at home. I think that's probably the only reason I'm going to take them. That both these teams are really good this year, and Lamar Jackson is just playing out of his mind.
Yeah,
the Houston defense hasn't seen that yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. With the Ravens at home, they beat the Patriots at home. It's hard not to take. It's hard to not take them.
I'm in agreement there. Patriots Eagles, late game of the week.
Yeah, a little Super Bowl matchup from a couple years back.
I forgot about that.
I'm gonna go with the Patriots on this one.
I'm going to agree with you and say the Patriots as well. This is going to be another good game. Hard to pick. If the Eagles play to their potential, they can win this game. But then again, we see the Eagles that we've seen in the past, they will lose this game by a lot.
Yes.
By a lot.
Especially with that New England defense.
Yeah.
Our next game, we have the Chicago Bears visiting the LA Rams.
Sunday Night Football. I think this is the battle of the 5 and 4 teams. I'm going to take the Rams at home. They'll fix their problems. Sean McVay's too good of a coach to let this go on for another week. And Mitchell Trubisky, he had a decent game against the Lions.
Not the greatest.
Better.
Yeah.
I think that's
for
that's a
for
good
that
enough word
reason,
to
though.
say.
I'm taking the Rams. I just think Chicago isn't.
Yeah.
They started off not pretty good, and they kind of went downhill.
Yeah.
So.
Monday Night Football. It's the Mexico City Chiefs Chargers.
I'm taking the Chiefs for sure. They're definitely going to bounce back. I think Mahomes is going to have a really good game in
Listen,
Mexico.
I know I was bad last week, but did you cheat off all my picks?
No.
I think you did. I'm taking the Chiefs as well. I think they'll bounce back against the Chargers. They had a good game last week, but just missed kick.
Yeah.
My wild cards this week is Dallas versus Detroit. I'm going to take Dallas in that game. It's going to be a good game. Detroit always seems to make it close. And then Denver versus Minnesota. I'm going to take Minnesota at home. Denver's been struggling a little bit. I'll take Minnesota at home. Those are my 2 wild cards. Jake?
For my wild cards, I have Buffalo visiting Miami. I'm going to go with Buffalo in this game. And my second wild card, I have Arizona at San Fran. I'm going to take San Fran. I think they're going to bounce back after their loss against Seattle.
It's time for our last say. Let's talk about the Golden State Warriors. 1 year ago Tuesday, Draymond Green went down the floor and didn't pass to Kevin Durant against the Clippers. Words were exchanged between the two of them, beginning the end of this Warriors era as we know it. They would go on and be themselves throughout the rest of the season, taking the number 1 overall seed of the Western Conference and getting to the finals nearly without missing a beat. But you know what happens next. KD tears his Achilles in Game 5 of the finals. Klay Thompson tears his ACL in Game 6. And then they lost the NBA Finals for the first time since 2016. Durant left for Brooklyn, and Thompson will likely be sidelined for this entire season. And just to make things worse, in their 4th game this season, Aaron Baines landed on Steph Curry's hand and broke it. He's now out until at least the end of January, and likely longer. But if there is a bright side for these Warriors, it's the guy they got in that Brooklyn trade, D'Angelo Russell. He struggled early on, but D'Angelo has been red hot as of late. In the last 4 games Russell suited up for since Curry went down, he's had 30 points and 8 assists against the Spurs, a career-high 52 points against the Timberwolves, 30 points and 7 assists against the Thunder, and then 33 points and 8 assists against the Jazz. Well, we saw what D'Angelo Russell is capable of in his 2-year tenure with the Brooklyn Nets, and now being the number 1 option for at least the next 3 months, D'Angelo can thrive and put himself in a position to make his 2nd consecutive appearance in the All-Star game.
I would like to talk about something that will not happen for another 11 and a half months, the 2020 World Series. Currently, the runner-up Houston Astros had the best odds at 4-1. The LA Dodgers and New York Yankees are tied at 5-1. The 2019 World Series champions, the Washington Nationals, sit at 14-1. I do not think the Nationals will repeat next year, which has not happened since the Yankees won 3 straight in 1998, 99, and 2000. I also do not think the Astros will bounce back and win the World Series next year, even though they currently have the best odds. The reasons is 1, Garrett Cole. There's rumors that he will not re-sign with the Astros, and this would be a big loss for them and a huge hole that they'll have to replace. I also predict that Cole will sign with the New York Yankees. And I think because of this, I think the Yankees will win the 2020 World Series. This will be their first World Series win since 2009. 2009 was also the last year the Yankees made it to the Fall Classic, an 11-year drought, which is actually a long time for the Yankees considering they have won the most World Series in Major League history with 27 titles. 2020 will give them their 28th title. There is still a long off season, and we still have to watch the whole 2020 season, so we'll see what happens next October.
That's it. We're done. Be sure to watch future episodes of Anchor Management every Wednesday at 7 p.m. right here on Laker Student Media.
And go back and watch previous episode on Laker Student Media and our YouTube channel. I'm Jake Fitzgerald.
And I'm Brandon Thomas. We'll see you next week.